Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. This week we are joined by the common sense of the Missouri Republican Party, State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick. Welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you, man.
It's been an interesting time to be alive. The Republican Party's had the majority for 20 years now. Had the governorship for 5, had supermajority for 10. You've kind of came in. Would you come in 12?
Yeah, 13. 12 was the election. 13 was my first session.
You've been here with the supermajority. You've been here with a Democrat governor, Republican governor. It's interesting. It seems to be a lot of the things that you would have thought you wanted to get done when you were running have been done. And now it feels like it's fell to you to be the one that says, okay, guys, let's do this. Well, let's do it the right way.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conservative victories over the last decade. You're right. I mean, when we got the supermajority, we began, finally had the ability to override Governor Nixon's vetoes and did a lot of that when I was in the House. And then after the 2016 election, we've had a Republican governor for almost 8 years now. And so we have been able to accomplish a lot. Obviously, the Senate has been a check on some of that every once in a while. But yeah, I mean, we all have jobs to do, and my job now is the auditor. I used to be in the legislature and was a policymaker and got to weigh in on the issues of the day and in a way that you don't do as the auditor. And so
probably helps you to be a better auditor, that you kind of know what those guys motivate. You know what that's like to work on a bill for 5 months and be there and crafting at the very end. I mean, that adrenaline. Other people don't know what that's like if they haven't actually lived that.
It is it's anybody who's not been around the legislative session in Jefferson City, it's hard to explain how it all culminates there in the last, say 72 hours of, all the work that has taken place by all these people from the legislators to the people that are drafting the bills, the people who are writing the fiscal notes on the bills, the staff that work with the legislators. I mean, it all comes down to that final 72 hours for the most part, with the exception of the budget, and you never know how that's going to turn out. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of heart that goes into it from people on all sides of it to get to where you end up. And sometimes, our side's really happy with the outcome, and sometimes we're not. And that's just kind of part of the process here.
You made the news recently. The initiative petition process. It's so funny. When you served in the legislature, people talked about we need to reform this, and everybody agrees you need to reform it up until somebody offers an idea on how. There's a pro-choice abortion IP coming through. Your office has a role in that. There's been a little controversy in the news about that. Tell me what happened with your role in this IP process.
Well, our job is to, when anybody files an initiative petition for circulation that could amend the Constitution or statute, we have to essentially investigate the potential cost or savings of the. You
audit the measure, right?
Yeah. So we look at that, and we have a very limited amount of time to do that. We have 20 days from the time that's filed to the time we have to send it to the Attorney General, and the first 10 days of that is used up by allowing people to submit information to us. So we really only have 10 days.
Is that enough time?
It's really not. It's enough time for us to do what we are currently doing. But if we were going to do a deep dive, bring in an economist to try to look at each one of these measures, it's not enough time. And then the other issue is you have sometimes 20 of these all coming in at once that you have to do, that are all different, that you have to do an analysis of each of them. And so the way the process works is it goes out, we survey state agencies, we survey county governments, school districts, cities, and ask for their input on how these provisions would affect their budget. Because our job is to look at the impact to state and local governments, not to the economy, not to individual citizens. It's to look at the impact to state and local governments.
Like a lot of people talk about Jackson County when you audit them. That's not how this works, right? If you just see something you want to audit right now, you can't go do it, right?
We have some ability to conduct discretionary audits on school districts and on county governments that don't have their own auditor. But yeah, when you get to a county that has an auditor, or any city or any road district, sewer district, ambulance district, we can only get to those audits by either an invitation by the governing body, which Board of Aldermen or County Commission, whoever, or by a petition of the citizens. And so we can conduct an investigation. The law gives us the ability to investigate potential fraud. But if we find a tip that somebody makes to the whistleblower hotline is credible, all we can say is, yeah, we think this is probably happening. and then we're done. You know, we can't take that into a full audit in the current statutory environment, and
There's
so
some legislation working on changing that, right? Senator Trent had a bill that may have included some provisions.
Yeah, he did, and we got through the House, and it was one of those things where it ended up on a different vehicle in the Senate, and we got very close to getting it done. It was one of the handful of things that not everybody, but a lot of people thought would get done at the end of the year that didn't, with the blow up at the last couple days of session, and so we'll be back to the drawing board on that next year, and hopefully what we would like to be able to do is if we conduct an investigation of an allegation of fraud or mismanagement or some kind of abuse of process or of taxpayer funds, and we find that that's credible, we think it is probably in the best interest of taxpayers for us to be able to take the next step and just do an audit on our own. And that we had support for that in the legislature, and it's not like we're not prosecutors, we're not law enforcement, so we're not going out and arresting people, we're not filing criminal charges against people. We're doing an audit, and then depending on the outcome of that, and the facts are going to be what they're going to be, we'll either close the book on it, or we'll send it over to law enforcement and work with them if there is actual fraud.
Tell me, medical marijuana, something everybody talks about. Now it's recreational marijuana. You guys have an auditing role in that, right?
We do, and state agencies are audited by the office routinely. The marijuana program has received a lot of attention over several years. We had the medical program.
Think it's going to let journalists smoke pot?
I can't speak to that, but maybe, I don't know. But you've got the medical program, then you have the recreational program, and so I think the industry has things that they would like to get answers to. I think there
has been some trouble. It does seem to take an awfully long time to move an address or to sell a shop or something. Are those the type of things you can look into when you do the program?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we'll look into. It's gonna be a thorough review of the program, and those are the things.
My assumption is you're more likely to find something with a new program. This is brand new. This was created out of nothing. So I assume that something like that, you're going to find best practices and things you could implement more so than a department that's been around for 50, 100 years.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, in a case where somebody's creating a new department, I kind of had the opportunity to create a new program, I guess I should say. I had the opportunity to do that with the ESA program and the Treasurer's Office, most scholars. And it is hard. There's a lot of decisions to make, and you're not always going to make the right one.
No matter what you do, you look back 2 years later, you're going to find something you could have done better, or you're not being real.
Right. And so, we want to be cognizant of that. And, we're not trying to Monday morning quarterback this thing, but we do want to make sure, because there's a lot of people that are interested in it. There have been for a lot of years, and it's time to just clear the air and figure out, look, are they doing the right thing? Are they making mistakes here and there? And whatever we find, we'll report it, and then the legislature can do what they want to do. And like you said, I mean, if it's taken a year or whatever for somebody to be able to get approval from the department to sell their license or their business from one licensee to another, that's a long time. That should not be happening. And so that's one example of something that could potentially be looked at as part of the audit. But we go in there, we do survey work, we begin the process of, we ask questions, then we develop an audit plan based on that initial survey work, and then go to work based on that.
You ran for statewide office, was about a year ago last month. Mm-hmm. You're the last guy that's been on the trail on the state level. You got a governor's race going, big heated governor's race. Secretary Ashcroft, Senator Eigel, and Lieutenant Governor Kehoe. Tell me, what's it going to, I guess you picked a horse? But if you haven't, tell me what's it going to take. You're the last person that's been on this trail. What do folks want to hear from these three?
Well, I think people just want the truth. We have so many campaigns that are built on platitudes and making promises that nobody's ever going to be able to keep. And I always just want to, when I ran for auditor, I mean, a big thing about being the auditor is there are significant limitations to what you're able to do. Right? You're an auditor. You're not law enforcement. I mean, so I was always trying to make sure that the things that I campaigned on when I ran for auditor and for treasurer, I was trying to focus on, these are the things that I can actually do in the office. Governor,
I think when you ran for treasurer, the ESA program was easier to do because you not only had relationships with everybody in the legislature, but you also had a pretty widely acclaimed time as House Budget Chair, so people trusted you on the numbers. I figured those things helped entrust you with that program and kind of helps you have the gravitas to implement it the way you saw fit.
Yeah, I mean, those are all the experience that I had the opportunity to gain as I was in the legislature and then was in the treasurer's office for a couple of years. Did definitely give me a lot.
The relationships, right? People trusted you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The crazy thing about that is, and I'm now to the point where since I've been up here for a little while, everybody that I started with is pretty much gone, and so most of the people that I was in the house with even after 6 years are gone too. So it's down to the point where.
So you said folks want to hear real from these three guys running for governor. Which one of them's real?
Well, listen, I think that look, I have relationships with all these guys. Mm-hmm. Lieutenant Governor Kehoe has always been a great friend of me and has supported me and the things that I've done. He's a hard worker. They all have good qualities. I'm certainly the closest with Mike, and they're all going to work hard. We'll see how it all shakes out. Ultimately, whatever happens in the primary, I will be 100% behind the winner of the primary because we cannot afford to have a divided party after August of 2024. And
is that possible when your party's this big? When the Democrats effectively, national Democrats, don't put money here anymore, it was almost destined to have some of these splits, right? Could you have avoided it? If you'd have went down a different path and you were in the state Senate, could you have helped hold that together?
If I was in the state Senate, I could. No, I don't
think so either.
I think that would be delusional of me to think that I could do a better job than Caleb Rowden or Cindy O'Laughlin at managing the Senate. That is a tremendously difficult job, and it's one that I don't want. And so I don't envy the. I think that is, as opposed to being the Speaker of the House, I think stepping up for leadership in the Senate is you're more of sacrificing yourself. It's just the reality. It's you can't make a deal with anybody. You're in a position of having some control, but not enough to really guarantee an outcome. So no, I don't think that me being in the Senate would be any better for the state of Missouri than than anybody else. Just frankly because of that reality. I'd try to be honest with myself about that.
Well, Senator Scott Fitzpatrick, the common sense of the party. Thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
Hey, absolutely. Good to see you.
Very much. We'll be right back. Hannah Beers will join our Opinion Maker panel after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back this week in Missouri Politics. Opinion Maker panel time. Representative Dave Griffith from here in Jeff City. Welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here.
Hannah Beers-Sutton with Axiom Strategies. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Kathy Steinhoff during Oktoberfest. Welcome back to the show. Guten Tag.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Brian Hawksworth, the man that everybody's going to know. Great college football weekend, right?
There's always a good college football
Did you
weekend.
think he was going to hit the kick?
I had a good feeling about it because he didn't have anything to lose. They would have gone to overtime. He's hit a lot of good field goals, but he's also struggled at times. I was really happy.
I've seen him struggle short term. I heard a guy say he just said he could just kick this one as hard as he could, and by God, he did.
He did. Harrison Mevis, SEC player, special teams player of the week.
Nice. All right, Hannah, the big court decision happened out of Cole County here. There was a lawsuit over the Senate districts, maybe saying that Rusty Black's district wasn't exactly right. It felt like Judge Beaton said, well, it's not perfect, but it's not bad enough to kick out.
Yeah, Judge Beaton made the right call. The judges who drew those maps, they fit within the framework of the Constitution, and it made total sense. I think probably what's happened is that the far left, once again, is trying to override our established procedures and the Constitution. But I will say, the campaign that I think was the smartest and the most savvy about this was Curtis Gregory's campaign. He's operated from the very beginning that the the maps of Senate District 21 will be the final maps of Senate District 21.
You know, I don't know that even if they draw that district in any possible way, the Democrats could pick that up, right? Probably not on your target list, right?
I don't know about that. I do think that the people who brought that suit, they had good reason to feel that they wanted to change. I think about even in Boone County, our congressional lines, which I know are different lines, they cut us right in half.
Yeah.
And so when you feel like your community's voice is being diluted and divided, that's very frustrating and very personal.
You know, Brent, it is interesting. I mean, you know, we all think about all these issues and the money, but I mean, you take the right map, and well, you can make your odds a lot better.
Yeah, it is interesting. We're talking about the Buchanan County, obviously, but it impacts the 21st, and that's been completely redrawn. I would say, Scott, to your point, Representative referenced it, it'd be very hard for a Democrat to win that seat. Now, Jim Mathewson many years ago did. That's a different era, obviously, but it's
God
been
love you, don't you know?
Yeah, from a different era. But I think right now it's like Hannah said, Doug Ritchie and Curtis Gregory are the two kind of front runners on the Republican side. I do expect Chuck Hatfield and the other side to appeal that. I expect the Supreme Court could take that up. We'll see.
You know, it is interesting. I mean, Central Missouri, because it's the center of the state, you can draw it all kinds of ways. Your Senate district's been in with Callaway County, it's been in with the Lake, it's been all kinds of places. It kind of does feel like Buchanan County, if there's always kind of been a Cole County senator, there's historically been a Buchanan County senator, right?
That's right.
I get why they're a little put out, maybe.
Yeah, and I think the maps, there are a lot of questions as far as the way the maps are drawn. And as far as my district goes, the way my district was redrawn, before I had obviously 38,000 people I represented, but of those 38,000 people, in the old map I had 26,000 voters. In the new map I have 21,000 voters. So I'm losing the 5,000 voters because of the way the map's drawn up, simply because of what ward was included in on this one, as opposed to the west side of town.
Well,
so.
now that you figured out the meter maid problem, I bet that goes up.
Well, but I can also tell you that in the last election, it didn't seem to affect the outcome. So.
So, Representative, this is just you're a very highly esteemed lawmaker from Columbia. I'm a simple hillbilly. But it feels as though where the law is on abortion may be a little further out than your average Missourian. So there's going to be an IP. I think everybody kind of saw that coming. It kind of feels like the pro-choice folks, if they could get together on a Jay Nixon, Claire McCaskill, when Democrats used to win mentality, they could roll an IP very successfully and maybe even affect the elections next year. It feels like there's a big fight between how big a bite are they going to take. What should happen?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to get the IPs to the point where we can make those kind of decisions about which ones are going to pass through. I think the people that are bringing forth these petitions feel like their reproductive rights have been infringed upon, and now they want to use another one of their rights, which is the IP, and they want to be able to put this to the voters. And yet we have met a lot of resistance from the AG, kind of overstepping his authority, to delay or stop, at minimum delay, and then the Secretary of State's language.
It's been a little silly.
So we just want to get to the point where we can see which ones are available to us, and then you're right, we just hopefully make a really smart, concentrated effort.
If they come to you and say, should we go big, maybe have opposition? Should we go conservatively and pass something we can run a big margin of? What would you do?
That would be a really hard decision for me to make alone, and I don't think that I would be the one making it alone.
Well, Brian, let me ask you this. Back when there was Claire McCaskill in office, right? When there was Jay Nixon in office, I get the sense they would have went to them and one of them would have weighed in. Now, maybe everybody wouldn't have followed, but I kind of think if they were on the same page on something, the Democratic Party, which was not all the time, but when they were, that's kind of what happened. You don't have, you've got Emanuel Cleaver is in Congress, you have Cory Bush, not that plugged into the state. Missing that big voice, this could turn into a Donnybrook, right?
It could be. I don't know. I understand what the representative is saying there, Scott, because we don't know exactly what's going to be on the ballot. Something will be on the ballot. I think back to minimum wage in 2006, and I think back to Medicaid expansion a couple of years ago and right to work. The voters of the state, even in Republican areas, did vote for positions that, quite frankly, were more Democratic, but then they turned around in the same election and reelected the Republican. I mean, Holly Rader in her own district, the sponsor of right to work, she won, I think, 70% of the vote, but yet the people in her district voted. So it'll be interesting to see if they get abortion on the ballot, what happens in rural Missouri. I don't know. It's hard for me to say if we've never seen this before.
And it feels to me like pro-choice folks, the folks that probably are on the ground, or maybe if you're in Democrat politics, you want maybe a more conservative measure that you know will win that'll garner large support. But if you're funding this, you want to go for the big thing. And it seems like the cross paths of out-of-state funders with local Democrats is a bit of a cross purposes.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see what language ends up as an IP. I think regardless, abortion's an intensely personal issue. Republicans are always pro-life nowadays, and we'll see what happens. But I also think the messaging will be whatever Missourians want it to be. And as my boss, Jeff Rowe, always says, the voters will decide what's too far.
What do you think? I mean, it does feel like maybe the law you passed might be a little more aggressive than most Missourians are at.
Well, I think, really to Kathy's point, I think really IP should have been addressed. That's the number one thing, and we talked about that at the very beginning.
What's the best way to have? What's the best way for IP to be?
I think for having each congressional district be represented, so you're not having St. Louis and Kansas City, Columbia and Springfield deciding what the vote's going to be. So I think outstate Missouri, I think we're forgotten in outstate Missouri, and I think that's where the general consensus is.
They don't even get signatures in southeast Missouri and north Missouri.
Well, and
totally blown off.
And I think that's on purpose. I don't think they go there. And I think that when you're paying people to get signatures, I think there's something empirically wrong with that. But I think that the way the process works, and we actually warned about this being on the ballot, and here it just come to fruition. We got IP to the Senate in February. I mean, it was there, so they could have taken it up any time, and they chose not to.
To me, it's everybody's for IP reform. It's just which type. Everybody likes ice cream until you only have so many flavors, and then kind of goes south. Let's talk about something good. Good times at Mizzou, right?
Oh, yes.
Of my professional lifetime, and I'm really Jim Bryan's thought, I don't think Mizzou's ever been in this good a spot. Not just because they beat a ranked team, but I don't think Mizzou's ever been in this good a spot.
Well, I'm not a big sports expert.
I mean,
but
the college
I'm gonna
overall,
tell you,
the support
yes.
throughout the state.
I mean, all you have to do is take a snapshot of the fans rushing that field and feel that energy and that excitement, and for it to be right there at the end of the game, I mean, it's like what movies are made of. And there was a documentary made about it, actually.
You and I, we've been in politics with Mizzou was almost a curse word.
True.
Like you couldn't find anybody to support it, barely even in Columbia. It to me, leadership matters.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what all's happened. I wouldn't know how to run a college at all. I try to drive around colleges most of the time, but the fact is, Moon Choice came in, and the proof is in the support. I mean, if the old guy would have showed up in the rotunda, nobody would have talked to him. They'd have went and hid.
Right.
I mean, Caleb Rowden and Kurt Schaefer carried that place on their back when nobody wanted to be there. Moon's turned that around.
Completely. I remember when I was in college, right as I was graduating, the 1911 thing was happening, and it was poisonous to anybody in Missouri. And then Moon Choi comes in and completely turns it around. They have great coaches now. I'm excited for them.
What do you think? I mean, I don't remember ever Mizzou having as much support as it does right now.
Well, I think Moon Choi for me he's a man of his word, and I think one of the things that I found out the very first year that I was in the House, I got a letter from one of my constituents that was a 6th-time generation MU supporter, and their granddaughter was being taught something in a poli-sci class. She sent me what the report was and the grade that she was going to get if she maintained the same philosophy. And I sent that to, I called Dusty Schneiders, and I said, I need you in my office. He came there. He said, do you mind if I show this to Moon? I said, no. The next day, he walked into my office, bypassed my LA, walked straight into my office, closed the door, and says, we're going to fix this. And that's the kind of man he is. And every time that I've dealt with him, he says he tells the truth. He didn't bypass hard questions, and I think that's the kind of leader we need.
Dusty does a hell of a job. Right, I mean, there was times when Kathy could have served her entire job all session would be to try to save Mizzou. Don't have to do that anymore.
Record funding, and Representative Steinhoff was at the governor's two bill signing ceremonies just about a month ago, the I-71 in Columbia, but he also had one at the Memorial Stadium. E.Y. Drinkwitz was there, and Representative Steinhoff, a member. It was Democrats and Republicans, but Dr. Choi said the governor's been a huge supporter of higher education, but the other thing that I think and yes, he has bipartisan support, there's no doubt about Dr. Choi, that I think has been so impressive is the Roy Blunt Next Gen initiative. And that was bipartisan. And there was a time there where the governor supported it, but they had to, I think, withhold some money. It came back. But your colleague, Senator Razor, believes it will cure cancer. It has the capability of curing cancer, dementia. Diabetes, there's all sorts of potential there, and they are recruiting a lot of people to work in that facility. It's just an amazing facility. A lot of construction, and yes, Dr. Choi is very popular, no question.
And another ranking, let me add, I don't know if you know that Mizzou got ranked #1 in their research reactor across our nation,
gonna have to be
which,
replaced,
as you were
right?
talking about, those, and they're October 2nd, I think they're breaking ground on the first expansion to that.
Let's talk real quick about Boone County Senate race. Steve Weber, Republicans, we don't have a person yet. Democrats going to be able to get him no primary? Because I think if he has no primary, he wins, right?
That's what I'm counting on. I'm all in with Stephen Weber. I think he'll be excellent representative.
You're all over these Senate races. Give me a Senate race folks should be watching.
SD 15.
That's West County, St. Louis?
Yes, so Andrew Koenig holds it now. David Gregory is working harder than I've ever seen a Senate candidate work before.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've actually had someone call me and say, hey, I just saw David Gregory knock on my door. And I'm like, it's like August of the year before.
His team hit 15,000 doors already.
Jeez.
And at the end of the day, fundamentals win the races, and he knows that. It reminds me.
What about Joe Peerless? Is that if things break right, I assume Trump is not maybe the best West County candidate. Joe Peerless, some of the Democrats are excited about. Is that a race that you'll need a good candidate to win, or without having to spend money? And
it's not an easy. It's not like if you're running in Southeast Missouri.
And Trump doesn't make it easier there.
He does not.
Let's say with a minute left, Brian, who won the week?
I would say Ken Hayden. Ken Hayden, and there's a big deal in Fulton in Mexico. They lost their 2 hospitals. That's been a big issue for Leader Quaid and your party. But Representative Hayden's really championed getting some health care back in those 2 communities. And JCMG has come up from Jefferson City and opened the clinic there. So it's not the hospital reopening, but it is a big deal.
You guys have done some great work covering that too. You've been all over that.
Yeah, there were hospital employees. We know for a fact Attorney General Bailey's doing an investigation that were not paid. I talked to one woman. She has a child with spina bifida, and they didn't, even though she was paying her insurance premiums, they didn't pay them so $50,000 in medical bills. So yeah, that's still under investigation by the Attorney General. Just heartbreaking. Those hospitals were really key components of those 2 communities.
Who won the week?
I'm going to say the auto workers. I think today is their 7th day of striking. I'm optimistic they'll have success that will.
How about a unique world where there's bipartisan support for a strike?
I love it.
I
wish we'd have bipartisan support for more things.
Who won the week?
Cody Smith. He had a great veto session.
My God, he had his entire caucus sign on to support him.
70% of the caucus were sponsors or host of the fundraiser. I mean, it's amazing.
That was an impressive fundraiser, man.
He's a rock star.
Who won the week?
For me, it's the Troy County, or Troy, Missouri veterans. They had I drove up to this morning. The police found a Purple Heart, and the Purple Heart has the name on the back of every one of them. And the police force up there did a search. They found a family member. So I drove up there this morning to they're going to reunite that family with that. So that's something that we talk about police in all kinds of ways, but that's something that's life changing for a lot of families.
I've got to say, Boone Choi, Dusty Schneider, Curtis Gregory, Caleb Broughton, Truman the Tiger, all of them. What a win against Kansas State. What a fun time to be in Columbia. Hope you'll join us next week. We'll talk a little more, hopefully another Mizzou win on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.